Welcome to BerryDunn's Fresh Perspectives in Social Work podcast series. My name is Lisa Roberts. I'm a manager with the State Government Practice Group with BerryDunn. And joining me today is Cammie Chapman, Special Counsel with Brown Peisch and the former Deputy Secretary of West Virginia's Department of Human Services. Today, we're going to talk about the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, class action lawsuits, and a defense strategy that utilizes a robust quality assurance program. BerryDunn has helped many states develop and implement continuous quality improvement, or CQI plans, and to drive sustainable change throughout the CQI plan implementation period. Brown Peisch works with states at all stages of class action lawsuits involving the ADA and substantive due process claims. Welcome to the podcast today, Cammie.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. So I know today we're going to talk a lot about how quality assurance programs can be used as a defense in certain lawsuits. But before we do that, can you give us an overview of the types of class action lawsuits that we are going to discuss today?
So the lawsuits that we're referring to today are class action lawsuits where plaintiffs are asking a federal court to intervene and oversee the operations of a state agency because the claim is that the state agency is not meeting the needs of a certain population. Advocacy law firms bring these lawsuits using anecdotal evidence to support their claims. They argue that the outcome of a handful of individuals demonstrate that the entire class or entire target population is at risk of poor outcomes. And without getting into a lot of detail and a deep legal discussion, generally there are two claims that are often brought against generally child welfare agencies and Medicaid agencies. So it's a substantive due process claim or a claim that the state is in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And again, without going into a lot of detail about how these claims are litigated, what's important for today's discussion is to understand that the plaintiffs have a high bar to make their case. So first, they have to prove that the anecdotal evidence is in fact indicative of the entire class of the target population. For a substantive due process claim, the plaintiffs must show that the state agency's leadership's conduct shocks the conscience with respect to the target population and is deliberately indifferent to that population. And for an ADA claim, plaintiffs must prove that the state lacks a comprehensive, effectively working plan for placing qualified individuals with mental disabilities in less restrictive settings. And it's my experience in working with states that states are actively working to achieve the best outcomes for all of their populations that they serve, but that states are not prepared when faced with a class action lawsuit to provide a comprehensive narrative of the tremendous amount of work that they're doing every day.
Great. Well, it certainly sounds like a complex issue and one that I'm sure takes a lot of effort and focus. So tell us, why should states focus on quality assurance as a defense in these types of lawsuits? I mean, why is that important?
So a quality insurance program can provide evidence that the state is in fact working on the issues that might be brought forward in a class action lawsuit, that the state is not deliberately indifferent, that they do have an effective working plan, and that the individual cases that are brought forward are in fact just that, individual cases, that those stories and those anecdotes are not indicative of the entire class of individuals that are served by the state. A robust quality assurance program gives states that evidence based on data. And it's my experience that states already are doing quality assurance programs in a piecemeal fashion. And so thinking about how can we bring this together and have a comprehensive report or plan is a great way to then later, when the lawyers are asking questions, being able to present this comprehensive narrative.
So I know today we want to talk about how, putting all those pieces together creates the evidence the states need. And I know it's often difficult for states to know where do they start. So what strategies or ideas do you have about how states might get started down this path?
So when states are thinking about developing a quality assurance program that covers multiple programs, that cover multiple systems and different services, it is important to put together a continuous quality improvement plan. Often they're referred to as CQI plans. And that written CQI plan is then the map that everyone can follow, even though they may be in different sections of an overarching department. When we're thinking about putting that plan together, we really want to be careful in defining the scope of the plan. It is important to set boundaries, both for the program staff to understand what is being reviewed, how is it being reviewed, and for the quality assurance staff so that they know where the boundaries are about their work. Having a written plan can be very helpful to resolve mission creep or regression, and as those issues might arise as the work happens. It's also important to put together the data sources that you have right now. So start where you can, with what you have, and then develop future key performance indicators, sort of a wish list of where do you want to go. I think folks get excited and start brainstorming, and they create a long list of KPIs that they want to know about. And then that becomes the work of really focusing then on this really long list. And sometimes that becomes a barrier to what is the goal? What are we driving towards? So having a wish list is great, but also being mindful of limitations on systems and really honing in on what key performance indicators will drive the system forward and focusing the efforts on those KPIs instead of everything under the sun. Also, it's important to determine how frequent are you going to review the data. So it's not a one-time meeting. It has to be on a regular cadence, and thinking about, how often are you going to review it and how often are you going to then publish it to your stakeholders. In that CQI plan, it's also very important to establish the review team and to make certain that leadership is involved in the review process. Now, executive leadership can't be in every data review meeting, but making certain that leadership is involved quarterly, semi-annually is so important because it indicates the importance of the data review work. And even if the leader is not able to attend those operational and programmatic meetings, it is still very important that they receive that information on a regular cadence. So I liked getting the data reports that we had agreed upon on a monthly basis. It allowed me to review, allowed me to ask questions, and then I was better prepared for the quarterly reviews that we did. Also thinking about data and putting in with the key performance indicators a view from the individual's experience. So I think we have a tendency as folks that are on the operations side to look at the data from that point of view, but it is very important to turn the lens and look at the data from the point of view of individuals receiving the service. Understanding and within the plan, it is an important portion of the plan is to identify where we're going to get the data. And that can come from a number of sources. It doesn't have to necessarily be sources that are only within the agency. It could be reports that independent evaluators are doing. It can be reports that providers provide through contractual requirements. Those reports are very important to also inform the work that the state is doing and its data, really as a checks and balances of making sure that everyone's agreeing on the same data points. And at the end of the day, the CQI plan must be sustainable. So it's important to think that whatever we put in place, we must be able to sustain this moving forward and reviewing that on a yearly basis to ensure that it is up to date, still in focus of the work that is happening and has sustainability moving into the future.
Great, thank you. I think I mentioned this at every pause, but it is such a complex issue for states. And, I know BerryDunn often helps states implement CQI plans and determine the data sources and the data quality and the data completion rates. But what quality implementation tips at a very kind of, it's having quality improvement is one thing, having quality improvement implementation is another. So what tips would you have to share with states?
I can't stress enough how important it is to have executive leadership involved. And the attitude of the executive leadership will dictate the attitude of the rest of the team. So when leaders are a part of those review meetings, we need to celebrate the wins and define win as anything possible. It could be a good win, could be like, listen, guys, we're now reviewing this data that we've been waiting on for the last 2 years. Celebrating wins is so important because Medicaid and child welfare systems are tremendously complex, and you can't wait until you see systemic change. People will be completely exhausted by that point if that's when we celebrate our win. So identifying any win, celebrating any win, and making certain that folks are excited about the data review process. It's also very important that when we're in those data review teams meetings, that the quality assurance team is not deemed to be the grader or the critic by the program staff. And so, again, I think that's where the executive leadership comes into play and helps facilitate the tough conversations that occur and need to happen around an identified barrier or a negative trend. This allows the CQI team or the quality assurance team to be that neutral party, and they're just delivering the facts. And my other tip, and I learned this from you, Lisa, is to make sure that there is lunch, that there are snacks, that we have plenty of breaks, and that we don't power through and get ourselves into a situation where everyone is miserable, or hangry. So again, thinking how you can create a safe space. One way was we moved off-site and had review team meetings in a kind of a neutral location, which just presented an opportunity for folks to feel as if it was a separate and safe space to have these conversations. It's also, I think, important for folks to have the ability to ask all the questions, even those that they may feel like exposed, or perhaps they're not saying it exactly correct, or this is a dumb question. As part of the leadership team, when I would be in the review meetings, I could kind of sense when folks weren't understanding the visual. And sometimes I just took it upon myself, even if I thought I understood the visual, I took it upon myself to ask those very basic questions, so that other folks who maybe, explain the red bar to me, and folks that perhaps didn't quite understand the visual could then have that discussion, and we could back up and really get back to basics. And so I think that's another place where the leadership can help facilitate a conversation when folks are kind of getting lost in the visuals, which happens, I think, a lot in data review. And then as people become comfortable, it is really important for the program staff to start doing their own data reviews and being the individuals introducing the data to the rest of the team. So that allows them to have buy-in about their data and how their program is operating. And it really builds the confidence of that program staff to understand those key performance indicators that are being reviewed.
Yeah, that's great. Those are some really important strategies. I think, when you're dealing with such a large amount of data in a full day meeting, keeping people fed is amazingly important. But I also think it's sometimes hard data, right? I mean, it's maybe not always the data that you wanted to see, and you have to really think about strategies you need to put in place to improve the data. So that's another piece of it, I think, that's really sometimes difficult for states, CQI teams to kind of get their head around. But thank you. Those are really great strategies.
It also gives people just a break. So I think when we would do all day meetings like that, your mind needs a little bit of a break of thinking through this really complex and complicated information, and having a snack and having chocolate available was a great resource to us all. Great.
Well, Cammie, thank you for joining me today to discuss this topic. I hope states that are listening found this information to be helpful. I know that many states are going through similar challenges with class action lawsuits or different issues they're trying to solve with data. I know my contact information is going to be available on the BerryDunn website at BerryDunn.com. But how could states find out more information if they wanted to know?
I know we covered a lot of information in a short period. For folks who are interested in a more in-depth discussion regarding these types of class action lawsuits and quality assurance programs, Brown Peisch and BerryDunn are hosting a workshop on this topic during the PHSA conference that's occurring in Reno, Nevada, October 19th through the 22nd.
Great. Thank you. And for those of you that are headed to that conference this fall, we hope that we can, Cammie and I can meet you in person. And if not, if you would like more information, please feel free to reach out. Thank you all.